But anywhere a prophet might occur, courteous he was and lowly of service too. Natural gifts like his were hard to match. He was the finest beggar of his batch, and for his begging district paid a rent. His brethren did no poaching where he went. For though a widow mightn't have a shoe, so pleasant was his holy how d'ye do. He got his farthing from her, just the same, before he left, and so his income came to more than he laid out. And how he romped just like a puppy. He was ever prompt to arbitrate disputes on settling days, for a small fee, in many helpful ways, not then appearing as your cloistered scholar, with threadbare habit, hardly worth $1, but much more like a doctor or a pope. His double worst was a semicope upon his shoulders, and the dwelling fold about him, like a bell about its mold when it's casting, rounded out his dress. He lisped a little out of wantonness, to make his English sweet upon his tongue. When he had played his harp or having sung, his eyes would twinkle in his head as bright as any star upon the frosty night. This worthy name was Hubert, and it appeared. This merchant, with a forking beard, and a motley dress, high on his horse he sat, upon his head a Flemish beaver hat, and on his feet daintily buckled boots. He told of his opinions and pursuits, in solemn tones, and how he never lost the sea could be kept free at any cost. He thought, upon Harwich Holland reigned, he was an expert at currency exchange. This estimable merchant so had set, so his wits to work, none knew he was in debt. He was so stately in negotiation, loan, bargain, and commercial obligation. He was an excellent fellow all the same. To tell the truth, I do not know his name. An Oxford cleric, still a student though, one who had taken logic long ago, was there. His horse was thinner than a rake. He was not too fat, I undertake, but had a hollow look, a sober stare. The thread upon his overcoat was bare. He had found no preferment in the church, and he was too unworldly to make a search for his secular employment. By his bed he prepared having 20 books in red and black, Aristotle's philosophy, to having fine clothes, fiddle or psaltery. Though a philosopher, as I have told, he had not found the stone for making gold. Whatever money from his friends he took, he spent on learning or another book, and prayed for them most earnestly, returning thanks to them, thus for paying his learning. His only care was study, and indeed he never spoke a word more than that was need. Formal at that, respectful in the extreme, short to the point, and lofty in his theme. The thought a sergeant at the law, who paid his calls wary and wise for clients at St. Paul's. There also was of noted excellence. Discreet he was, man to reverence, or so he seemed. His sayings were so wise. He often had been a justice of assize. His letters patent and in full commission, his fame and learning and his high position. He had won him many a robe and many a fee. There was no such conveyancer as he. All was fee simple to his strong digestion. Not one conveyance could be called in question. Nowhere there was so busy a man as he, but he was less busy than he seemed to be. He knew every judgment, case, and crime recorded ever since King William's time. He could dictate defenses or draft deeds. No one could pinch a comma from his screeds. And he knew every statute off by rote. He wore a homely party-colored coat, girt with a silken belt of pinstripe stuff. Of his appearance, I've said enough. There was a Franklin with him, it appeared, white as a daisy petal with his beard, a sanguine man, high-colored and benign. He loved a morning sop of cake and wine. He lived for pleasure, and had always done, for he was Epicurus' very son, in whose opinion such sensual delight was the one true felicity in sight. As noted as St. Julian was for bounty, he made his household free to all the county. His bread, his ale were the finest of the fine, and no one had a better stock of wine. His house was never short of baked meat pies, of fish and flesh, and these in such supplies. It positively snowed with meat and drink, and all the dainties that a man could think. According to the seasons of the year, changes of dish were ordered to appear. He kept fat partridges in coops beyond, many a bream and pike were in his pond. Woe to the cook whose sauces had no sting, or who was unprepared in anything. And in his hall a table stood arrayed, and readily all day along with his places laid. As justice of the sessions, none stood higher, he often had been a member for the shire. A dagger and a little purse of silk hung at his girdle, white as morning milk. As a sheriff he checked audit every entry. He was a model among a landed gentry. A haberdasher, a dyer, a carpenter, a weaver, and a carpet maker were among our ranks, all in the livery of one impressive guild fraternity. They were so trim and fresh their gear would pass for new. Their knives were not tricked out with brass, but wrought with purest silver, which avouches like display on girdles and on pouches. Each seemed a worthy burgess, fit to grace a guild hall, with a seat upon the dais. Their wisdom would have justified a plan to make each one of them an alderman. They had the capital and revenue, besides their wives declared it was their due, and if they did not think so, then they ought. To be called madam, it is a glorious thought, and so is going to the church and being seen, having your mantle carried like a queen.